In 1903, the year the Wright brothers achieved their historic flight in a powered aircraft, 11-year-old Elizabeth Bessie Coleman was already navigating a world fraught with challenges due to her gender and race. Nevertheless, Bessie shattered barriers and became the first woman of African and Native American heritage to obtain a pilot's license. Nikki Grimes's children's book from 2002, titled Talkin About Bessie, presents the incredible journey of this aviator through a collection of eulogies spoken at a fictional memorial service held after her passing in 1926. Over 20 individuals who were part of Bessie's life, including her family and flight instructor, share brief oral tributes that take on the lyrical quality of poetry. Paired with accompanying watercolor illustrations, these various voices vividly illuminate Bessie Coleman's spirited personality. Nikki Grimes offers a preface that contextualizes Bessie's achievements within the social and cultural landscape of early 20th century America. This was an era marked by racial segregation and the presence of Jim Crow laws. Lynchings of African Americans were tragically commonplace in the South, while white supremacist ideologies were promoted by organizations like the Ku Klux Klan. Many in the white community held prejudiced beliefs that deemed African Americans intellectually inferior. Additionally, societal norms discouraged women from pursuing activities that were considered devoid of domestic or moral significance. Enter Bessie Coleman. Born into a family of fieldworkers in rural Texas during the 1890s, she defied the odds. The narrative of Talkin About Bessie ironically begins right after her tragic plane crash that claimed her life. Grimes establishes the central concept of her creative biography early on, stating, "Somewhere on the south side of Chicago, 20 souls gather to mourn the death of Bessie Coleman and share their memories of her." While the voices, speech patterns, and characterizations may be artistic constructs, they effectively represent, in chronological order, the pivotal moments in Bessie's life, spanning from her childhood to her untimely passing. The initial voice to recount memories of Bessie belongs to her father, George Coleman, a man of mixed African and Choctaw heritage. He recollects the chilly day in January when his 10th child, Bessie, came into the world. Even from her first cry, which he describes as lifting the roof off their modest dirt floor cabin in Texas, Bessie's spirit seemed oriented towards the sky. When Bessie reached the age of 9, George ventured to Oklahoma in search of better job opportunities, while her mother, Susan, took on cleaning work to provide for their 13 children. Despite her domestic responsibilities, Bessie remained a bright and enthusiastic student at her one-room schoolhouse. The teacher from that schoolhouse reminisces that Bessie had an insatiable appetite for knowledge, likening her to a miser accumulating precious coins. Mathematics particularly captivated young Bessie's interest. However, the reality of an uninterrupted education was a luxury that her impoverished family couldn't afford. When harvest season arrived, Bessie left school to help pick cotton, and she earned additional income by laundering clothes for wealthier white families. One of her customers attests to Bessie's dedication and reliability, praising her for meticulously collecting and returning the laundry without delay and impeccably clean. Despite this praise, the customer expresses a sense of indignation that Bessie would look her in the eye and carry herself with a sense of equality, even when entering through the back door, as was the custom in those times. Unable to continue her studies at the Colored Agricultural and Normal University due to financial constraints, Bessie stumbled upon a Chicago newspaper that featured stories of determined women like Ida B. Wells. The tales of such women convinced the 23-year-old Bessie that Chicago held promise for African Americans seeking better opportunities. With her 2 brothers, she made the move to Chicago and secured a position as a men's manicurist in a barber shop. Among her clientele were World War I pilots, whose accounts of their experiences greatly intrigued her. Bessie's brother, John, recounts the pivotal moment when she made the decision to become a pilot. While serving in France, John had seen women flying planes, and when he shared this with Bessie, he challenged her by adding that Negro women could never achieve such heights. According to John, that challenge spurred Bessie to quit her manicurist job on the spot. He knew then that Bessie was determined to overcome any obstacles and learn to fly. Since American aviation schools at the time rejected both women and African Americans, Bessie set her sights on France. She learned French and secured financial support for her venture from Robert Abbott, an editor of an African American newspaper. In 1920, she set sail for France, and within a year, she became the first woman of color to earn an international pilot's license. Her daring aerial maneuvers and stunt flying earned her celebrity status. Upon returning to the US, Bessie captivated audiences with her barnstorming shows. Although these events typically excluded African American spectators, Bessie insisted on breaking down such barriers. One admirer of Bessie's stunts described how she performed spirals, flips, and even daring mid-air stops with her plane. A reporter who witnessed her in 1922 recounted how, with her goggles on, she waved to the audience while they showered her with applause. Despite her fame, financial challenges persisted. Bessie couldn't afford her own plane, and though she aspired to establish a flight school for African Americans, she lacked the necessary resources. Tragically, at the age of 34, while preparing for a show in Florida, Bessie fell from her plane and lost her life. The final voice in Talkin About Bessie is Bessie's own. Her photograph, positioned on a mantle within the room where 20 mourners gather, serves as the focal point through which her perspective is observed as she watches over the gathering. She expresses the exhilaration that soared through her while flying, and she concludes her life story with a resolute declaration: "You have never lived until you have flown." Through the use of multiple perspectives to narrate Bessie Coleman's journey, Talkin About Bessie recognizes that a biography represents a specific interpretation of a person's life, just as the book's intricate illustrations do. Grimes's unique interpretation of Bessie shines a spotlight on the themes of education, determination, and unwavering perseverance that shaped her remarkable life. Talkin About Bessie was bestowed with the distinction of being named the 2003 Coretta Scott King Author Honor Book, and it also garnered the esteemed 2003 Coretta Scott King Illustrator Award. I hope you enjoyed this video. Leave a like if you did, and be sure to subscribe. Thank you.